The first time I realized something was wrong was when I heard laughter coming from inside my house. Not the familiar kind. Strange voices echoing through halls I'd painted myself just last summer. I stood frozen on my own front porch, keys dangling uselessly in my hand, wondering if this was how it felt when your world started to crack. But I should back up. I'm Zoe, and this house has been my life for the past decade. Not just a place I live, it's been my purpose, my promise, my prison. Every creaking floorboard and stubborn window has my fingerprints on it. I've replaced pipes, rebuilt porches, and brought my grandfather's dream home back from the brink, one repair at a time. "You're so good with the house, sweetheart," Mom would say, her voice dripping honey. "What would we do without you?" I heard those words again this morning as I scrubbed mold from the basement walls before heading to work. 10 years of those words, 10 years of "someday this will all be yours," whispered like a lullaby while I drained my savings account, fixing leaky roofs and crumbling foundations. "Your grandfather would be so proud," Dad added, not looking up from his newspaper. "You're the responsible one. The responsible one. That's me, the one who gave up a promotion in Seattle because the house needed a new heating system. The one who hasn't taken a vacation since college because there's always another repair, another project, another reason to stay." "You should see what your cousin Justin's doing with his life," Mom said, stirring her coffee. "He and Emma just bought that beautiful condo downtown." I bit my tongue, like always. Justin hadn't worked a day in his life that didn't involve spending someone else's money. But I stayed quiet, focused on the task at hand. The basement wouldn't clean itself. Now, standing on the porch as those strange voices filtered through my front door, I felt something shift. 10 years of quiet resentment crystallized into something harder, sharper. I turned the key, pushed open the door I'd refinished last spring. The voices grew louder, coming from the living room. My living room, with the hardwood floors I'd restored by hand. "We could knock out this wall," a familiar voice said. Justin. "Open up the whole space." "And those hideous curtains have to go," Emma added with a laugh. "I can't believe she kept them so long." My curtains, hand-sewn by my grandfather's sister, preserved carefully through 3 decades of sunlight and storms. I'd spent weeks researching how to clean them without damaging the delicate fabric. I moved toward the voices, my work shoes squeaking against the floor. In my head, I heard my grandfather's voice from that last day in the hospital. "Take care of the house, Zoe. It's all there in black and white." I never understood what he meant by that last part. Not until later. Not until it mattered. The living room door was open, and there they all were. Mom, Dad, Justin, Emma, standing in my space like they owned it. Mom was pointing at my grandmother's china cabinet, suggesting where it should be moved. Dad was nodding along, that same vacant smile he always wore when avoiding conflict. "Oh, Zoe!" Mom's voice went sugary sweet when she saw me. "We were just about to call you. We have such exciting news." I looked at their faces, excited, expectant, entitled. They had no idea what was coming. No idea what was buried in that small, fireproof box upstairs, hidden behind my winter sweaters. No idea that my grandfather had seen this coming long before any of us. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Emma stepped forward, her designer heels clicking against my carefully restored floors. "We're going to be neighbors," she squealed. "Well, not neighbors exactly. We're moving in." The laughter started again, but this time it felt like glass breaking. I looked at my mother's smile, my father's averted eyes, Justin's smug grin, and knew this was the moment everything would change. I just didn't know how much. "Moving in!" The words came out like stones. "What do you mean, moving in?" Mom clasped her hands together, that practiced smile still plastered across her face. "Well, sweetie, your father and I have been thinking. The house is so big for just you, and Justin and Emma need more space now that they're planning for a family. So, we decided to sell it to them." Dad chimed in, as if he was announcing a surprise party. "Isn't that wonderful?" Emma was already pulling out her phone, scrolling through what looked like Pinterest boards. "We're thinking of going with a modern farmhouse aesthetic. That garden of yours will have to go, of course. We want a proper entertaining space." My garden. The one I'd spent 3 years cultivating, with heritage vegetables from my grandfather's original seeds. I felt my fingernails digging into my palms. "Sell it?" I managed to say. "But I live here. I've been taking care of this house for 10 years. You always said—" "Oh, don't be dramatic, Zoe," Justin cut in, rolling his eyes. "It's not like you own it. Mom and Dad do. And they got a great deal on the sale, didn't you?" Mom nodded enthusiastically. "Just $1. To keep it in the family and avoid those nasty transfer taxes. Isn't that clever? $1. They sold my home, my life, for $1. When?" The word came out barely above a whisper. "We signed the papers this morning," Dad said, still not meeting my eyes. Justin's lawyer drew everything up. Very professional. Emma clapped her hands together. "And we need to start renovations right away. The contractor's coming next week, so you'll need to be out by Friday." "Friday?" My voice cracked. That's 5 days from now." "Well, you don't need much time, do you?" Emma's smile was sharp as glass. "It's not like you have a husband or kids to pack up. Just your little craft projects and those awful vintage pieces." I looked at the awful vintage pieces, my grandfather's hand-carved bookshelf, my grandmother's hope chest, the family photos I'd carefully restored and framed. "Mom," I turned to her, hating the pleading in my voice. "You promised. All those years, you said if I took care of the house—" "Now, Zoe," she interrupted, her tone shifting to that patronizing pitch I knew too well. "We never made any formal promises. And really, dear, it's time you moved on. Find your own place, meet someone, start a real life." "A real life?" The words tasted like acid. "What do you call the last 10 years? All the money I spent on repairs, the promotion I turned down, the relationships I put on hold?" Justin snorted. "That was your choice. Nobody asked you to play martyr." "Actually," I said, my voice growing stronger, "Grandfather did. In writing. Remember his last wishes?" A flicker of something. Worry crossed Mom's face, but she recovered quickly. "Your grandfather was a sentimental man, but this is about what's practical. Justin and Emma can afford to maintain the property properly." "With what money?" The words shot out before I could stop them. "The trust fund he burned through? Or Emma's daddy's credit card? That's enough." Dad's voice rose for the first time. "This decision is final. We're trying to do what's best for everyone." Everyone except me. I turned and headed for the stairs, my legs shaking. "Don't be like this, Zoe," Mom called after me. "We'll help you find a nice apartment." I didn't answer. I could hear them below, Emma already discussing paint samples, Justin laughing about gutting my grandfather's study. Each word was another nail in the coffin of my family's loyalty. In my room, I sat on the bed, staring at my closet. Behind the winter sweaters, behind the box of old photos and letters, sat a small, fireproof safe. Inside was an envelope I'd never opened, marked, "In case of emergency," in my grandfather's precise handwriting. "What's buried can't be stolen." He'd told me that last day, his voice weak, but his eyes sharp as ever. "Remember that, Zoe. When the time comes, remember." I reached for my phone and dialed a number. "Shanice? It's me. Remember that legal question you said I should never need to ask? Well, I need to ask it now." Below, I could hear Emma's voice floating up. "We'll have to fumigate, of course. Who knows what's living in these old walls?" I looked at the safe again and felt a cold smile spread across my face. They had no idea what was living in these old walls, but they were about to find out. "Girl, tell me you didn't open that envelope all these years," Shanice said, settling into my window seat, the one I'd rebuilt after a storm 2 winters ago. Her paralegal badge still hung from her neck, and she clutched a steaming cup of coffee like a lifeline. "Never needed to," I replied, pulling the fireproof box from my closet. "Until now. The envelope inside was thick, yellowed with age but sealed tight. My grandfather's handwriting was as familiar as my own. For Zoe, when they forget their promise." "He knew," I whispered, breaking the seal. "He knew they'd do this." Shanice leaned forward as I pulled out the documents. "What are we looking at?" "It's—" I stopped, reading and rereading the first page. "It's a reversionary trust clause, dated 3 days before he died. In English, please," Shanice said, but her eyes had that sharp legal look I knew too well. My hands shook as I read aloud. "In the event that any party attempts to transfer or sell the property at 1847 Maple Street for less than fair market value, all rights and ownership shall immediately and irrevocably revert to Zoe Armstrong, sole beneficiary of this trust." Shanice nearly spilled her coffee. "They sold it for $1. They sold it for $1, I confirmed, a laugh bubbling up that sounded almost hysterical. "There's more. Look at this. He had the house appraised 2 weeks before he died. Current market value would be at least triple that now." "Your grandfather," Shanice said slowly, "was a goddamn genius." I closed my eyes, remembering that last day in the hospital, the way he'd gripped my hand, his voice barely above a whisper. "They'll try to take it," he'd said. "Your mother never could see past her own reflection. And Justin, that boy's got poison in his heart." "I don't understand," I'd told him then. "You will." He'd smiled, that clever glint still in his eyes. "What's buried can't be stolen, Zoe. The truth's in the ground, in the foundations, in black and white." Shanice was already typing on her phone. "I'm texting Jarrett. He's the estate lawyer who handled your grandfather's will. He'll confirm everything, but honey..." She looked up at me. "This is legitimate. They played themselves." "So what do I do?" I asked, though something cold and certain was already forming in my chest. "Right now? Nothing." Shanice's smile was fierce. "Let them dig their hole deeper. Let them start spending money on renovations. Let them feel secure. And then, we bury them with their own greed." She pulled out a legal pad. "Start gathering every receipt, every bill you've paid. Document everything they're planning to renovate. We'll need proof of their intent to undervalue and flip the property." From downstairs, I could hear Emma's voice drifting up. These old floors have to go. I'm thinking Italian marble. The floors my grandfather had laid himself, the ones I'd spent a summer refinishing, every splinter and callus a labor of love. They're going to be angry, I said quietly. Shanice snorted. They're going to be destroyed. Your cousin already took out a renovation loan using the house as collateral, a house he'd technically never owned, thanks to this clause. Mom will cry. Dad will say I'm tearing the family apart. The same family that's kicking you out with 5 days' notice. Shanice raised an eyebrow. The same family that watched you pour your life into this house and then sold it for less than a cup of coffee. She was right. 10 years of being the responsible one. 10 years of someday and we're so proud and what would we do without you? I knew what they'd do without me now. They'd tear down every memory, every piece of history, every trace of my grandfather's legacy. Unless I stopped them. Okay, I said, straightening my spine. What's our first move? Shanice grinned, flipping to a fresh page in her notepad. First, we let them think they've won, let them start their renovations, let them get comfortable. And then, she said, we show them what's really buried in these old walls. Below, Justin's laugh echoed up the stairs, the same laugh I'd heard when he broke my art project in 3rd grade, when he accidentally ruined my prom dress, when he told everyone at family dinner about my failed engagement. I looked at the trust document in my hands and felt my grandfather's wisdom wrap around me like armor. What's buried can't be stolen, I whispered. I understand now, Grandpa. I understand perfectly. The sound of a chainsaw ripped through my morning coffee. From my temporary apartment across the street, I watched Justin attack my garden with the kind of enthusiasm he usually reserved for spending other people's money. There goes the heirloom tomatoes, I said into my phone, snapping pictures. And my grandfather's rose bushes. Document everything, Shanice replied. Every plant, every modification. The trust specifically mentions maintaining the property's historical character. I zoomed in as Emma directed workers to pile my carefully cultivated herbs into a dumpster. They're going for full demolition. Justin just took out a $100,000 renovation loan. Perfect. Shanice's smile was audible. The bigger they spend, the harder they fall. I'd spent the last 3 days moving out, playing the part of the defeated daughter. Mom helped, offering hollow sympathies while picking through my belongings like a vulture. You really should donate these old things, she'd said, holding up my grandmother's quilt. Start fresh, modern. I'd nodded, meek and tearful, while secretly photographing every family heirloom they planned to trash. The quiet title action was already filed. Jarrett had seen to that. Now we just needed them to dig deeper. A truck pulled up to the house, loaded with marble tiles. Emma clapped her hands like a child at Christmas. You should see their renovation plans, I told Shanice. They're gutting everything, even the original woodwork. Your mother called the office today, Shanice said, trying to get information about your grandfather's estate records. That made me sit up straight. Why? Apparently, they found something in the attic, some old papers that spooked them. I smiled, remembering the files I'd carefully planted before moving out, copies of property assessments, tax records, and one very interesting letter from my grandfather to his lawyer. Did they mention the trust? I asked. Not yet, but they're starting to sweat. Your father asked about property transfer laws. Through my window, I watched Emma directing workers to tear out my grandfather's handcrafted porch railings. Each crack of splintering wood felt like justice loading its chambers. My phone buzzed. A text from Justin. "Found your little vegetable garden notes. Real cute playing farmer all these years. Hope you kept some seeds for your apartment balcony." I forwarded the text to Shanice. More evidence of intentional destruction of property improvements. "Your mother's getting nervous," Shanice said. "She asked about reversionary clauses today, casually, like she was just curious." "They knew," I said, watching Emma measure the front yard for her planned fountain. "They knew about the clause but never read it. Mom told me yesterday they thought Grandpa was just being sentimental. Their lawyer's going to have a heart attack when this hits." Shanice chuckled. "Speaking of which, Jarrett found something interesting in the county records. Looks like your parents haven't been reporting rental income from the guest house." I nearly dropped my phone. "What, rental income?" "Exactly. Someone's been paying cash to live there for 3 years. No records, no taxes paid. The pieces clicked together. Mom's new car, their mysterious investment income, the way they always changed the subject when I mentioned checking the guest house." "Tax fraud," I whispered. "Among other things. Want to guess who signed as property manager on the rental agreement?" "Justin." "Bingo. Your cousin's been collecting under the table while you maintained the property. Real estate fraud, tax evasion. It's like Christmas came early." Through my window, I watched my mother arrive, wearing her tennis whites and carrying designer shopping bags. She air-kissed Emma, admired the destruction of my garden, then looked up, straight at my window. I didn't hide. Let her see me. Let her wonder why I wasn't crying anymore. "When do we move?" I asked Shanice. "Give them 1 more week. Let them get the marble installed. Let them tear out all the original features. Let them spend every penny of that fraudulent loan. And then, we show them what your grandfather really buried in that trust. By the way, Jarrett says he's never seen anything quite like it. Called it a masterpiece of karmic justice." I watched Justin swing his chainsaw at my grandfather's prized apple tree, Emma cheering him on like it was a sport. 1 week, I agreed. Let them think they've won. My phone buzzed again, another text from Justin. "Found some weird old papers in the study. Guess your grandpa really did love you best. Too bad it's our house now." I smiled at the phone, then at the house that would soon be mine again. "Oh, Justin," I whispered. "You have no idea how right you are." "A farewell brunch." Emma's voice dripped with fake sympathy over the phone. "How sweet of you, Zoe. Just wanted to say goodbye to the house properly," I said, matching her saccharine tone. "One last family meal before the renovations are finished." They all came, of course. They couldn't resist the chance to gloat. The dining room table, my grandfather's pride and joy, was now surrounded by dust sheets and construction debris. But I'd set it perfectly one last time. Mom brought her signature mimosas. Dad carried in a grocery store cake with "New Beginnings" written in garish blue icing. Justin and Emma arrived last, stepping carefully around paint cans in their designer clothes. "Oh, you're using the old china," Emma said, wrinkling her nose at my grandmother's place settings. "We're donating all that, by the way. Getting a modern set from Williams-Sonoma," I smiled, pouring coffee into my grandfather's favorite cup. "Before we eat, I thought we could listen to something special." "Please, no more nostalgia," Justin groaned, but I was already pressing play on my phone. My grandfather's voice filled the room, crackling through the recording I'd found in his study. My dearest Zoe, the voice began, and I watched Mom's champagne glass freeze halfway to her lips. If you're hearing this, then what I feared has come to pass. What is this? Dad asked, but Mom shushed him, her face growing pale. This house, my grandfather's voice continued, was built on truth and justice. Your grandmother and I raised our family here, hoping they'd learn those values. Some did. Some. He coughed. Some chose different paths. Emma's fork clattered against her plate. Justin's smug smile began to slip. So, I'm leaving you a gift, my dear. Not just the house, but the means to protect it. Check the trust documents. The real ones. The ones that make you sole beneficiary if anyone tries to steal what's rightfully yours. Mom stood up so fast, her chair toppled backward. Turn that off. Instead, I reached into my bag and pulled out the trust papers, letting them fall onto the table between the mimosas and the untouched cake. It's all there, I said quietly. Every detail, including the clause about property transfers under market value. You can't, Justin started, but his voice cracked. That's not legal, I smiled. Oh, but it is. Your lawyer should have checked more carefully before drawing up that $1 sale contract. We did check. Mom's voice rose hysterically. We knew about the trust, but it wasn't supposed to be. Binding? I finished for her. Funny how legal documents work when you actually read them. Emma grabbed Justin's arm. What is she talking about? The house was never theirs to sell, I explained, enjoying how her perfect makeup couldn't hide her growing panic. And that renovation loan you took out? The one secured against property you never legally owned? That's going to be interesting to sort out. You vindictive little... Justin lunged forward, but Dad held him back. That's not all, I continued, pulling out more papers. Want to talk about the illegal rental income from the guest house? The unreported taxes? The property fraud? Mom collapsed back into her chair. How did you... I learned from Grandpa, I said. About keeping records, about waiting, about watching people dig their own graves. We're your family, Dad tried, but his voice was weak. Family. I stood up slowly. Family doesn't steal 10 years of someone's life. Family doesn't destroy their inheritance for profit. Family doesn't... My voice caught, remembering every dismissal, every manipulation, every cruel little victory they'd celebrated over me. The house reverts to me, I said, steadying myself. Immediately. The trust is clear. Your sale was invalid the moment you undervalued the property. We'll fight this, Justin snarled. With what money? I asked. The renovation loan that's now worthless. The rental income you can't report without admitting to tax fraud? Emma was already pulling out her phone, probably calling their lawyer. Mom had tears running down her face, real ones this time. You have until tomorrow to get your things, I said, standing up. All of you. The marble can stay. Consider it payment for 10 years of free property management. Zoe, please, Mom whispered. We're your parents. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt the last chain of obligation break. No, I said. You're just the people who taught me what betrayal looks like. I walked out of the dining room, leaving them with their cold coffee and their worthless contracts, my grandfather's voice still playing softly in the background. Remember, my dear, what's buried can't be stolen. And I buried the truth deep enough to save you. The locksmith was changing the last deadbolt when Justin's BMW screeched into the driveway, kicking up gravel. He jumped out, waving papers like battle flags. "You can't do this!" he shouted. "Our lawyer says—" "Your lawyer," Jarrett interrupted, stepping out of his car with perfect timing. "Should find a new profession." He adjusted his tie, looking every bit the high-powered estate attorney he was. "The trust is ironclad." Emma scrambled out of the passenger seat, her designer heels sinking into the mud of what used to be my garden. "We spent over 100,000 on renovations." "Without proper permits," I noted, accepting the new keys from the locksmith. "The Historical Society would love to hear about the original woodwork you destroyed." "You planned this?" Justin snarled, advancing toward me. "You knew all along and let us spend the money, like you knew about the rental income from the guest house?" I smiled as he stopped cold. "Funny how secrets work." A police cruiser pulled up, right on schedule. Officer Martinez stepped out, nodding to me. "Everything okay here?" "Just explaining property rights to the former owners," Jarrett said smoothly. Justin's face went from red to purple. "Former? We have a contract." "An illegal one?" Jarrett replied, pulling out documents. "The trust explicitly states—" "To hell with the trust!" Justin lunged forward, but Officer Martinez was faster, stepping between us. "Sir, I suggest you calm down." Emma grabbed Justin's arm, her perfect manicure digging into his sleeve. "The bank," she said desperately. "The renovation loan." "Is your problem," I finished, "along with the contractor's liens, the unpaid permits, and the Historical Society violations." A familiar Mercedes pulled up. Mom and Dad, right on cue. Mom burst out, still in her tennis outfit, mascara streaked down her face. "Zoe, please," she begged. "We can work something out. We're family." "Family?" The word tasted bitter. "Let me tell you about family." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. "Here's the garden you destroyed, the one Grandpa and I planted together. Here's the woodwork you ripped out, the ones he carved by hand. Here's the guest house you rented illegally while I paid for repairs." "We were going to tell you," Dad started weakly. "Like you told me about selling the house?" I showed them the next photo, the property transfer document with its insulting $1 figure. "Or about how you planned this for months." Emma stepped forward, trying a different approach. "Think about what people will say. The scandal." "Oh, I have." I nodded to Jarrett, who pulled out more papers. "The notice of invalid sale is being published tomorrow, along with the tax audit findings." Mom swayed on her feet. "Tax audit?" 3 years of unreported rental income," Officer Martinez said. "The IRS is very interested." Justin threw his renovation papers on the ground. "You handed us the knife!" "No," I corrected him, thinking of the fireproof box upstairs. "Grandpa handed me the shield. I just waited for you to show your true colors." "The marble," Emma whispered, looking at the half-finished floors through the window. "Consider it your going-away present." I turned to Officer Martinez. "They have 1 hour to collect personal belongings. Anything left behind will be considered abandoned property." "You can't just—" Justin started, but Jarrett cut him off. "She can, and she has. The property is legally hers. Always was, thanks to the trust." Mom made one last attempt, her voice breaking. "I'm your mother." "And I'm your daughter, the one you taught to be responsible, to keep records, to plan ahead." I met her eyes. "I learned well, They filed into the house under Officer Martinez's supervision, Emma crying, Justin cursing, Mom and Dad silent. Through the windows, I watched them gather their things, stepping around the renovation debris they'd created. Jarrett touched my shoulder. Your grandfather would be proud. He knew, I said quietly. He knew they'd try this someday. Smart man. Jarrett smiled. The trust was his masterpiece, but you... He gestured at the scene unfolding. You made it art. An hour later, I stood on my porch, my legal, rightful porch, watching them load their cars. Justin couldn't resist one last shot. You'll regret this, he called. You'll be alone in this museum of a house. I looked at the home my grandfather built, at the garden I would replant, at the walls that held our true family history. No, I said, more to myself than to him. I'll be free. The newspaper headline hit like a thunderclap. Local family faces legal battle over historic home sale. Below it, a photo of Justin and Emma being escorted from the property, boxes in hand. The story spread through our small town like wildfire. Your phone's been blowing up, Shanice said, scrolling through my messages. 3 calls from your mum's church friends, 5 from the country club, and... Oh, look who finally remembered you exist. Aunt Patricia. I was too busy supervising the contractors, removing Emma's precious marble floors. Underneath, my grandfather's original hardwood remained intact, protected by the construction paper they'd laid down. Can you save it? I asked Tony, the restoration specialist. He ran his hands over the wood, smiling. Your grandfather's craftsmanship? Absolutely. Give me a week. It'll look better than new. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. The bank is threatening to sue us over Justin's loan. Please call me. Delete, Shanice said, taking my phone. Oh, wait. Here's a good one. Emma's daddy cut off their credit cards. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I saw Justin storming up the walk, Emma trailing behind him. They looked different now. Designer clothes wrinkled, perfect hair unkempt. Here we go, Shanice muttered as they pounded on the door. Officer Martinez, who'd stayed to oversee the renovation crew, opened it before I could move. This is private property, he reminded them. Private property? Justin's laugh was hysterical. We're being sued. The bank, the contractors, the historical society. Everyone wants their money. Sounds expensive, I said, not looking up from where Tony was carefully removing marble pieces. Emma pushed past Justin. Your mother is devastated. The whole town is talking. About what? I finally turned to face them. About how you tried to steal my inheritance. About the illegal rental income. About how you destroyed protected historical features. We didn't know, Emma wailed. Yes, you did. I pulled out my phone, playing the video I'd recorded weeks ago. Them laughing about demolition permits, joking about that old trust clause. Justin's face went white. You recorded us? I learned from the best, I said. Remember when you filmed me crying at Dad's birthday party? After you announced my broken engagement before I could. Emma grabbed Justin's arm as he started forward, but Officer Martinez was faster. That's close enough, he warned. The bank says the loan was fraudulent, Emma said, her voice cracking. They want the money back immediately. Should have read the property records more carefully, Shanice chimed in cheerfully. But I guess that's what happens when you try to steal a house for $1. A familiar Mercedes pulled up outside. Mom and Dad again. They looked smaller, somehow, defeated. Mom's tennis whites had been replaced by simple jeans, Dad's golf clothes by a worn sweater. "Zoe!" Mom called from the doorway. "Please, we had no idea. He really left it all to you. All of it," I confirmed. "The house, the trust, the legal protections, everything you tried to take." "We're your parents," Dad tried, but his voice faltered. "Parents?" I walked to the window, pointing to the destroyed garden. "Parents don't watch their child pour 10 years of love into something and then sell it for spite. Parents don't conspire with a cousin who's always hated their daughter. Parents don't—" I stopped, feeling the weight of all those years of being the responsible one finally lift. "The contractors need to work," I said, "and you're trespassing." "We'll lose everything," Justin said, but it wasn't a threat anymore. It was a plea. "You already did," I replied, "the moment you decided I was worth less than $1. Officer Martinez began herding them out. Emma turned back one last time. "The whole town will know what you did to your family." "Good," I said, watching Tony reveal another section of my grandfather's pristine hardwood. "Let them know exactly what happened here." They left slowly, their expensive cars looking out of place now, their perfect facades cracked beyond repair. Mom paused at her car, looking up at the house, really looking at it, maybe for the first time. "He knew," she whispered. "Your father knew exactly what we'd do." "No, Mom," I corrected her. "He knew exactly what I would do." I closed the door on their retreating figures and turned back to the house. My house, legally and morally, now and forever. Tony looked up from his work, smiling. "The foundation's solid," he said. "Your grandfather built this place to last." "Yes," I agreed, running my hand along the walls that had waited so patiently for justice. "Yes, he did." The last moving box from the guest house held a surprise, an old guitar case, dusty but intact. Inside I found my grandfather's prized Martin acoustic, along with a stack of recordings labeled in his precise handwriting. Family Songs, 1975-2015. "Look what survived the purge," I called to Shanice, who was helping me sort through the remnants of Justin's failed tenancy. "Play something," she said, settling onto the window seat. I strummed a chord, the strings surprisingly in tune. Through the open window, spring air carried the scent of new growth. The heritage garden I'd replanted was taking root again. My phone buzzed. Another text from Mom. They'd moved to a small apartment across town after the bank foreclosed on their house. The tax audit had been brutal. "Still not answering?" Shanice asked. "Not yet." I picked out the melody of an old folk song my grandfather taught me. "Maybe someday, but not today." The doorbell rang. Through the window I saw Jarrett's car in the driveway. "Brought you something?" he said when I opened the door, holding up a folder. "Final paperwork from the court. Everything's settled. The house, the trust, even Justin's renovation debts. It's really over." "No more appeals?" "Hard to appeal when you're facing tax fraud charges." He smiled grimly. "Your cousin and his wife moved out of state. Your parents." He hesitated. "I know," I said. "Mom keeps texting. Dad sends cards." "Are you going to respond?" I looked around at my home. Really mine now, legally and spiritually. The hardwood floors gleamed again, the garden was sprouting, and my grandfather's photographs had returned to their rightful places on the walls. "Eventually," I said. "When I'm ready, when it's on my terms." Shanice appeared with coffee, and we settled in the living room. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Peterson from next door admiring my new vegetable beds. The Historical Society wants to feature the house in their summer tour, Jarrett mentioned, sipping his coffee. They're impressed with the restoration. Grandpa would like that, I said, running my fingers over the guitar strings. He always said this place was meant to be shared, with people who'd appreciate it. Speaking of sharing, Shanice grinned, pulling out her phone. You won't believe what Emma posted on social media yesterday. Full meltdown about toxic family dynamics and karmic justice. Let her talk, I said. The truth has a way of coming out. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, catching the brass nameplate on my grandfather's guitar. For those who protect what matters. You know what's funny? I strummed another chord. They thought they were taking something from me, but really, they gave me something instead. Freedom, Shanice suggested. Truth, I corrected. About them, about me, about what family really means. Jarrett gathered his papers. Your grandfather would be proud, not just of saving the house, but of how you did it, with dignity, with justice. After they left, I sat alone in my grandfather's study, his guitar across my lap. The house creaked and settled around me, familiar and safe. Through the window, I watched the sunset paint the garden in gold. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from an unknown number. Justin. I hope you're happy in your museum. I looked at the fresh paint, the restored floors, the thriving garden, at the family photos that now told the true story, at the guitar in my lap and the trust papers on the desk, weapons of justice, handed down with love. Not a museum, I whispered to the empty room. A home. My home. I picked up my grandfather's guitar and began to play the song he taught me so long ago, a song about roots that go deep, about foundations that last, about love that builds instead of breaks. The music filled every corner of the house, and for a moment I could have sworn I heard him playing along, his fingers on the strings, his voice in the harmony, his wisdom in the walls. I didn't need their version of family anymore. I had something better, truth, justice, and a home built on both. The last note faded into silence, but the house held it, kept it, made it part of its story. Our story. Not a story of revenge in the end, but of restoration, of reclamation, of return. I was home. Finally, completely, rightfully home. And that was all that mattered.